Welcome back. The Steve Finnegan Show. Nic Horton, founder and CEO of Opportunity Arkansas. Filling in for Steve. Rest assured, Steve will be back tomorrow. But I'm grateful for the opportunity, and thanks to you, Steve. I know you're listening out there for letting me fill in today. Hey, I want to jump right into it because we've been fortunate to get Representative Brit McKenzie on the line, and I want to be sure that we get into a couple of these topics that may be of most interest to folks in Northwest Arkansas in particular. Representative McKenzie represents the Rogers area, serves as the vice chair of the House Education Committee, believe is about to go into his third term in the Arkansas House. And I can promise you folks it's going to be fun. You're probably going to learn a few new words. And so, Representative McKenzie, I really appreciate you joining us. How are you today?
Yeah, thanks for that amazing intro, Nick. Happy to be with you today.
Well, what I failed to mention is he's actually, and this is perhaps the most impressive thing that he's ever done, he's the top vote getter, the top scorer on the Opportunity Arkansas Legislative Scorecard for 2025. He scored 102% on our scorecard. And you might be wondering, how does someone score more than 100%? Well, they vote really, really good on really good conservative policy, but then they also lead the charge and help sponsor really, really good conservative policy. So I want to be sure I mention that, and thank you for everything you're doing to fight for taxpayers. I want to get to this story real quickly about the University of Arkansas law dean. It's gotten a lot of attention, a lot of pearl clutching from the liberal media and otherwise. What if folks really need to know? What's happening behind the scenes that maybe is underreported here that folks should really understand about this situation at the law school?
Yeah, thanks, Nick. Well, and I want to make sure to be clear because it's such a wonderful intro, and the scorecard designation you gave me, I do share that with Representative David Ray. So we have 100. We're tied for 100.
Good point. Good point. Sure yes. Clear. Tie goes to the runner. Tie goes to the runner, though. But yes. Good point.
Yes. So in terms of what's happened in Fayetteville, you mentioned in the intro, I am the vice chair of the House Education Committee. I do try to keep a pulse on all different forms of institutions of education in the state, and our mandate and our responsibility for providing the legislative oversight is not just in our K-12 environment, it's also higher ed. So unfortunately, this is something I learned about in the news, like a lot of Arkansans. I don't want to pass any personal judgment or aspersions on Miss Suzuki. I don't know her, and I haven't read all of her published works in her academia. But what I do understand to be true is that there wasn't full disclosure about the work that she had done, the letters that she had signed on, the amicus briefs that she had been a part of, and letters to the court or letters of friends of the court. In the process of interviewing and applying for the University of Arkansas. So that's disconcerting. Any candidate that we want to put into a position of leadership in any institution, I don't care if it's a state-run daycare to the law school at our predominant university in the state of Arkansas, we need to have full disclosure. What really concerns me is the process. And we're losing the lead, or we're losing the forest for the trees in this entire public outcry. That's what it is. People are upset. I think people are upset on both sides of this. How could we get to a place where a candidate who doesn't fully disclose the things that she's done as a part of her academic profile and part of her position, stature as a law professor, and then how do we go to a place where we're retracting an offer that we made public, and where along that process did we have errors? From my perspective, we had errors everywhere. This position was left vacant for over 2 years. And the advisory committee and then the advisory committee to the search committee was not necessarily comprised of key stakeholders in the process of providing oversight to our institutions. So what does that really mean? It's of my opinion that, yes, the legislature, albeit we have independence, our Constitution is clear that the universities as well as a few other agencies have some form of independence. It doesn't mean they're completely devoid of accountability or oversight on who they hire, how they hire, and the process that go within that. So I think what needs to happen is a full examination of hiring, specifically for positions of note. In the appropriations process, we appropriate based on head count. There are some specific roles or titles and pay bands that go into that, but I think that there should be further scrutiny on, okay, how much key stakeholder, external stakeholder input are you getting into this? The University of Arkansas is just that, is the University of the state of Arkansas. It's chartered through our Constitution. They do have some independence to that Constitution, but they still do rely on taxpayer dollars to fund their day-to-day operations. So it's unfortunate. Again, I don't want to – any one person may have their own political beliefs and opinions, but this really needs to get down to the nuts and bolts of process. Are we doing what's best based on the people that comprise our institutions, those that go there, those that pay tuition to attend, and then those that ultimately help fund or underwrite the existence of that institution? So there's a lot of things we can learn. I suspect that there will be some legislative corrections that are proposed in the upcoming legislative session in 27.
Okay, we're talking with Representative Brit McKenzie from District 7 in Rogers. We're going to have to take a brief TV timeout and pay some bills, but he's agreed to stay on and hang with us into the first segment of the next hour. Hope you'll stick around. Nic Horton filling in for Steve Finnegan. We'll be right back. Welcome back to the Steve Finnegan Show. I'm Nic Horton, founder and CEO of Opportunity Arkansas, filling in for Steve. I don't know how. If you love America, I don't know how that intro doesn't just get your blood pumping. Excited to be here and excited to continue the conversation. If you want to be a part of the show, 501-403-5276. You can call in, you can text in. The American Leak detection line, by the way, I failed to say that today. I'm still in training over here, but the American Leak detection line, 501-403-5276. We're talking with Representative Brit McKenzie, state representative from the Rogers area. Thank you, Representative, for hanging on through the break. I know that was a bit of a hold there, but I want to just kind of close the loop on what we were talking about at the top of the last hour, this situation with the law school dean, and get your thoughts on this. I think I want to say it's surprising, but it's really not. But so many of the stories, so many of the articles that I've seen, and this outcry and this pearl clutching from the state media, and even one of your colleagues, Representative Nicole Clowney, a Fayetteville Democrat, issuing the statement of this whole scenario with legislators speaking out and legislators getting involved and legislators, elected officials daring to have opinions about the law school dean. She categorized it as horrifying, unprecedented, and absolutely unconstitutional abuse of power. That's a direct quote from Representative Clowney. And I just find this just so mind-boggling that, I mean, you're a state legislator. Like, I mean, why would you not have you or any of your colleagues have just as much a say and just as much of a voice in this process as anyone else, if maybe not more so?
It's an interesting occurrence. I mean, obviously, when things go wrong or there's a public relations, issue like we're experiencing right now, everyone's going to kind of go back and cite this unconstitutionality. We have got like 101 amendments, so at any given moment, anything could be considered unconstitutional because we've treated our Constitution like a etch-a-sketch and not like a sacred document that we don't touch unless a preponderance of people really agree that those are things that we believe are all rights. Nevertheless, I don't believe it to be unconstitutional. And I want to be clear, I am for, this may be an unpopular opinion within my own caucus, I'm for dissenting voices in a classroom, not necessarily indoctrination. I think, understanding the opposing side's view on anything, and not just saying within politics, with, how we could do anything within an academic pursuit, plus your lived experience forms the foundation of your values. I hope faith is a part of that as well, but I think that's how we get to a place where we have critically thinking individuals that comprise our society. So I'm not for, this person did one thing that I disagree with politically, therefore she's not qualified. I do think that there is a series of things that we can examine as to what makes this person maybe not the best person for the role. And that's ultimately what we want when we hire someone who's going to be a leader of any of our institutions, whether it's a state agency, whether that's a superintendent in our community. We want the best person for the job that's going to fit with the culture of the place they're going to ultimately be leading, and bring with them their experiences. So, I don't agree with the constitutionality of it. We are the legislature. They are a state agency. They have it just by a different name in terms of institution of higher education. We provide them appropriations. We are afforded a level of oversight. So like I said, I think there will be an examination of the process for hiring specifically some of these larger roles going into the future.
Yeah, well said. And I just think the idea that because you're a state legislator that somehow you have less of a say, like you don't have a First Amendment right to voice your opinion or any of your colleagues on this hiring process. I mean, why would we think that that's a reasonable position? I just found that to be kind of stunning, especially from a law school professor who's also a state legislator. I want to switch gears really quickly because if we don't, we're going to run out of time. While we're on the topic of education, we've talked a little bit in the first hour about education freedom. Certainly, that's something else that just seems to be constantly in the news. And unfortunately, because of the left-wing bent of so much of our state media, most of the headlines seem to be particularly great. I know there was recently some activity where there wasn't enough funding appropriated because there's been such an enrollment surge in the program and a lot of people just losing their minds about how much this program is costing. You're the vice chair of the Education Committee. I know you're a passionate advocate of and defender of education freedom. What's your perspective, just very broadly here, on the current status of our education freedom program? We're in year one of it being fully universal. What's your perspective on how it's going?
I think it's a success, and anyone that can look at a program, any type of government program, objectively will say, what is your vision or mission statement of the program, and are you accomplishing those things? And then what, if any, corrections need to be made? 44,000 students represent, 44,000 families that are voting with their feet and determining that the education environment for their students is what's most important, not your zip code or how far you are from the elementary school down the road. So I think it's a success. It was all government programs. This is government we're talking about. We want to make sure that there's transparency and accountability along the process. And we have that. I mean, that's why every 3 months we're seeing these quarterly reports that are due back from the Department of Education where we're citing, hey, this is what's occurring and here's how we're going to make either a regulation or a rule fix or a change or an increase in a budget. And it's a Chicken Little moment every 3 months, and I kind of I'm getting to the point of sticker shock on how the mainstream media is going to take and bend this as to be a bad thing. This is a success. Obviously, what matters most when we talk about funding for education is what that equals in terms of student outcomes. So I'm looking forward to seeing more in terms of our assessment, our Atlas assessment, which is as a part of LEARNS was the new assessment we rolled out, moved away from an off-the-shelf version provided by the makers of the ACT test. So we're seeing that success. We're seeing those cut scores and standards be nationally normative as opposed to preparedness for college, which isn't necessarily the measure of success and longevity. So I'm looking forward to seeing more data as it comes. And there was recently a Democrat Gazette story about population increases and decreases. And in reality, there will be a natural ebb and flow. As people become more aware of a program, they're going to move into an environment that makes sense to them, whether it be homeschool, private education, parochial, or into a traditional setting. So all of this needs to be viewed through the lens of that these are the way that public policy works with education is long-term experiments. Public education, that's going to make some people go nuts, is an experiment. It's a experiment in policy prescription to see if the societal good plus the money we appropriate to it equals good outcomes. The same needs to be said for our education freedom accounts and school choice. To review the success of a program in the middle of the first year of universal eligibility is irresponsible, and it's just used as a political talking point. So I'm excited to see how these students assess based on the normative tests that we require of anyone with the EFA. I'm excited to see how our public schools assess based on the changes in curricula, the available CTE, and broader pathways we've done. So, and then this is just a friendly reminder that we have, in the last 3 years, invested more money in the future of Arkansas than pretty much the entire history of the state combined. We're putting our money where our mouth is. We're pushing our chips in the middle and saying we want better for future generations. So I'm excited. It's successful. Of course, there's going to, we just proved an additional tranche of money to go into the program because people want it, because there's a desire and demand to take your student to an environment that makes sense to them.
Well, and that's the part that I think willingly the media and the naysayers are going to continue to overlook, is that the reason that there's more money that is needed to fund the program is because the demand is so high. And the demand is not so high because people are unsatisfied or unhappy, or they're putting kids in shoddy schools and they're not happy with the results. The demand is high because parents and taxpayers and voters like what they're getting and they want to get more of it. We've got just a couple minutes left. We're talking with Representative Brit McKenzie from District 7 in Rogers. Real quick before you go, I want to get your thoughts on income tax. It's a big topic. I'm hoping it's going to be an even bigger topic this year. We had a really big state surplus last year. No income tax, unfortunately, no income tax cuts. Unfortunately, a lot of people disappointed about that. It looks like another really big surplus is on its way this year. What can you tell us about the attitudes at the Capitol and what we might expect in terms of income tax reform in 2026?
I definitely think it's on the horizon. I'm not going to give any, information that's not publicly consumable or hearing in the back room anywhere. This is just based on the trade winds that we're seeing. It's looking like there's going to be another tax cut on the horizon, but it's just a matter of the value of that tax cut. Prior to me coming to the legislature, we were, 0.1%, 0.1% off of our tax cut, 4 or 5 times a year. We've moved to a different model where we're going to 1/4 of a point or half of a basis point off of this tax cut. I'm committed to a roadmap to zero. With that is some necessary things. There's going to be some functions of the government we're going to have to evaluate and determine, are we getting the outcomes we desire for the money we're spending on it. The shape and the direction that our state has taken just the last 3 years of not only the Sanders administration, but kind of a newer wave of a legislature is we're excited to provide opportunity in the state of Arkansas. And a lot of that has to do with economic liberty and the ability for individuals to, build, grow, or start a business in Arkansas. The best way to do that, and this is a national, and this isn't just my opinion, this is how a lot of people shape what they believe in economic developments, in my air quotes here, is certainly in educational opportunities and a friendly pro-business tax environment. We've got one that we're really excited it's on the tracks, and the others we've got to continue to commit to going down to zero. If not that, then I'm committed to a Tabor method or something similar to what the state of Colorado has, where we lock in at one bracket at a very low rate, and it can go up or down based on those economic factors like surpluses or withdrawals from rainy day funds or restricted reserves. So we've got to do it. We've got to continue on that commitment to our people. We have to evaluate the current shape of our government. If there's anything that needs to be reduced or winnowed in order to make that commitment to our people.
All right, we got to leave it there. Representative Brit McKenzie, thanks so much for your time. I know it's very precious and limited, but thank you for calling in and making time. We're on the Steve Finnegan Show. Nic Horton filling in for Steve. We'll be right back after this break.